An entitled Karen tries to take my child from me, claiming that I'm too young to have a child and that she's gonna call the cops, assuming that I stole this kid from somebody else. And I'm so blown away by this interaction, and now I seriously don't know what to do. So I'm a 20-year-old female with a 3-month-old son, and we took our son to the park for the first time. They have swings that are good for little babies, so we had him in there, and he absolutely loved it. There was an older lady there with 3 kids. I'm assuming her grandchildren because they were pretty young, and she seemed like my grandma's age. Now, she was eyeing us up since the moment we got there. My fiance is a smoker, and he's not allowed anywhere near the baby while smoking, so he went to the baseball fields to sit and smoke. This is a decent ways away too, by the way. Even though this is a very, very small town, I didn't know this woman, as we didn't live in the town that we are currently at. We live in the biggest town in the county, but apparently the county's park didn't have any swings, even though it's huge. But I was very familiar with this town, as I lived here for many years when I was younger, so he was fine with leaving us alone, just not familiar enough to know the people anymore. My step-grandparents also lived here, so I felt comfortable for the most part. After my fiance had went over to the ballpark, this entitled Karen approached me and began talking to me. She asked me how I like babysitting, and when I said that, I just laughed at her and told her I wasn't babysitting and that this was my son. And when I said this to her, this set her off. She grabbed a hold of my wrist and told me don't lie to her, stating that I'm too young for this to be my son and that she doesn't believe me. She told me if I don't produce valid forms of identification for the both of us, she would call the police for kidnapping. So here's the issue with that. I don't carry my wallet on me that often, and the only forms of identification I have from my son is his insurance card. And this is because his social security card and birth certificate have not yet come in due to everything at the time being bogged down by the virus. I told the lady that, and she turned in her grip in my wrist, stating that that's a lie because they give you documents at the hospital. Well, they definitely didn't do that in my case. Now, what happened next absolutely blew my mind, as this escalated to the point where she shoves me down and tries to grab my son, stating that she will be keeping a hold of him until the cops arrived. When this happened, I quickly got up and grabbed my son from her. I didn't punch her, but I did sort of palm her nose, which I guess I did harder than I meant to, as it did cause some damage. She yelled at me that she was going to press charges for assault. My fiance was making his way back during this time and caught the tail end of the confrontation. Skipping ahead to when the cops show, they are talking to each of us, but the old lady won't stop screeching, so they take her further away so we can talk. Now, at this point, I am completely in fight mode and I'm terrified. I'm frantically explaining that I don't have ID, but this is my son. We just came here to the park to play. If there was any way I could prove I was the mother of my son, I showed him a photo of my C-section, of him literally getting pulled from me, and him on my chest a few hours later. Obviously, he looks different now, but you can tell it's the same baby. We were allowed to go home, and we were told we'd be hearing from someone about the assault and charges against the woman. This is all so crazy, and it happened so fast. Before we go any further, the original poster has some updates to the story. Here's what they had to say. We set up an appointment with a lawyer for this Monday, and I will be going to the police station later today. We called ahead and made an appointment for 3 o'clock. Now, when it comes to if the park had any cameras, I was pretty sure they didn't, as it's a very small area, but I called anyways, and it turns out they actually did. They agreed to send a copy of the footage to me, but they only have a couple, so I'm not sure if what happened was caught on tape, as the cameras are near the pavilion and the swings are off to the side. I know I should have reacted better, but I was in such shock and it happened so fast. But hopefully all of this will move on quickly and I can move on with my life. Wow, what an awful situation. Seriously, I can't imagine being in her shoes. Here you are just trying to enjoy the park, and then someone comes around and literally tries to take your child. Like, that is honestly insane. How can someone honestly do that and think that that's okay? The original poster actually has more to say about this, and not only did the cameras in the park not pick up any of this interaction, but apparently the original poster got charged with assault and the charges against the old lady were dropped, and that is honestly so awful. That entitled old lady, in my opinion, got off easy. And you know what? If I was in the original poster's shoes, I would have palmed that lady in the face as well, if not escalated this a little bit further, if they seriously think I'm gonna let them take my kid. They currently are trying to get this appealed, so hopefully something good comes out of this. Because in my opinion, you did nothing wrong. You were protecting your child, and in my opinion, you did absolutely nothing wrong. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. This next one came from the Am I the Jerk podcast subreddit. Check the links in the description if you'd like to submit your own story. Am I the jerk for throwing my brother-in-law's vape away because he wouldn't listen to me? Here's what happened. So here's a bit of backstory. I just recently had a baby. My baby was a C-section baby and came out a whole month earlier than expected. My daughter was in ICU for 13 days before coming home. Before bringing my daughter home, the nurses told me that if she was to get sick within a month, she would have to be back in the hospital due to her undeveloped lungs. They also told me that she couldn't even be in the same house as a vapor or smoker, as it could make her severely sick, and there is a possibility that she would not survive. She has been home for 10 days now, and today my brother-in-law continued to vape in the house after telling him on multiple days and times to stop, as it could make her sick and possibly hurt my daughter. He literally just straight up said, "So I didn't ask for a baby to be in the house. In fact, I hope my vape does cause problems. I'm tired of her interfering with my life." I told him he could always go into his room and open the window with his door closed, but just not vape in the general area where everyone hangs out to see the baby. Well, I was making my daughter a bottle and I was feeding her when he vaped and purposefully vaped her way twice. I told him to stop, and it was the last time I was gonna tell him before ruining his vapes and not caring in the slightest how much he spent on it. Then, not even 5 minutes later, he tried doing it again, and this is right when I'm in the kitchen burping my daughter. After feeding my daughter, I saw his vape unattended, so I grabbed it and threw it outside and watched it smash into pieces on a tree. Later, he tried looking for it, and I told him that he shouldn't have been vaping in the house like I had asked him nicely on multiple occasions. I told him to look outside for the vape. He screamed when he finally found his vape outside, ruined and in pieces, and then came back inside and began yelling that I was a jerk. He said that he spent his last $50 for the next 2 weeks on this said vape and that I had completely ruined it. I told him to start listening to the rules instead of trying to hurt my daughter, and if he can at least do that, this won't happen again. Also, keep in mind he is very entitled and acts like everyone in his life, including my husband, is his maid and should just do everything for him, like clean up his room and make his food, put his food on a plate and serve it to him, while also demanding that we should be buying him things with our own money and so much more. He also doesn't pay rent, and he shouldn't even have the vape in the first place anyways, as he is not even 21 years old yet. So honestly, what should I do? Before we go any further, the original poster has an update to their story. Here's what they had to say. So, since some people are confused, my brother-in-law does not get along with the rest of the family. This is mine and my husband's property and home, and my brother-in-law has nowhere else to go and goes to school in this district. My husband doesn't want his brother in the streets. Also, my husband's mother spoiled the entitled brother-in-law as he is the baby of her kids, so she gave him everything. He has demanded everything, even if it meant that she had to go into debt just to give him what he wanted. So anyways, last night my husband and his brother got into it severely. My husband didn't really get mad at first. They started off by talking about how my husband's work was. He was then told by my brother-in-law that I ruined his vape for no reason. Keep in mind, by the way, I was napping with the baby at the time, so my husband didn't know the extent of what was going on. Well, my husband said that I would never do that as I was a vapor myself before our daughter came into the world. Then his brother demands that my husband buy him a new vape, and this is where it gets wild. My husband said no, and my brother-in-law then started to yell. He said, "I just wish your baby wasn't around anymore. That way I can at least have my brother back. It's not fair. You always choose them over me. I thought family was supposed to come first, you jerk." My husband then yelled back and said, "Don't you dare say some garbage like that. They are my family. My daughter is my world. But I have to come home almost every night with my wife crying because she is worried about my daughter's health. I suggest that if you want to live here, you need to get off your butt and start working and learn to smoke outside and away from the family I am building for myself. And if you have a problem with my wife and my daughter, then you can leave my house. I'm not doing you any more favors going forward. You are on your own." Now, my brother-in-law was in shock and just stood there dumbfounded. He got really upset and left the house to go to his friend's place. My husband feels as though he needed to finally learn a lesson since their mother spoiled the kid rotten before he lived with us, as was said before. So far today, my daughter and I are snuggled up together while my husband is getting ready to go back to work again today. I was told by my husband that if he comes back home and causes me problems, problems, I should give him a call, and then he will come home as soon as possible and address the issue. Wow, your brother-in-law sounds absolutely awful. This guy is seriously blowing vape in your daughter's face. I mean, the nurse was really clear about this situation. Your daughter cannot be exposed to anything like that. Cigarette smoke, anything with vaping, all that stuff cannot go in her lungs. She is just a baby. She just barely got out of the hospital, and she was barely born. And your brother-in-law is being the most selfish jerk on planet Earth. Like, seriously, think about what he's doing right now. He has said on multiple occasions that he doesn't want this baby around. And I use that term lightly because what he actually said was atrocious. It was seriously uncalled for, and there was no good excuse for anything that he said. It honestly makes sense as to why the rest of the family on your brother's side don't really like your brother-in-law. He sounds like just this punk kid who clearly got everything he wanted in life and now is trying to use that as some kind of leverage in your home. Like, he's spoiled rotten, and he's trying to act like this baby, as well as the original poster, are some kind of deterrent to him having a brother again. Like, he seriously was like, I can't believe you're choosing them over me. Like, what, are you crazy? Of course he's choosing his daughter and his wife. He made a serious commitment when he got married. He's not just gonna turn his back on them and be like, you're right, you can vape all the time whenever you want. Like, that's seriously insane, and there's no excuse for that. So no, you are not the jerk. I would have thrown his bags and all of his belongings out the door as well, not just the vape if that was me. So hopefully something can change in your living situation, because this guy does not sound like a good person. And honestly, you deserve way better for you as well as for your infant daughter. Am I the jerk for not babysitting my wife after she got super drunk? Here's what happened. So my wife and I were on vacation in a foreign city. We met up with some friends, went out to dinner, and then hit the bars. And I got fairly tipsy, even borderline drunk. Out of nowhere, my wife decides it's time to go all out and informs me that it's her turn to get drunk. The problem was, I'm already tipsy and drunk myself. Then she just straight up disappears. We send a female from the group into the bathroom to find her, but nope, my wife just vanished to the bar and proceeded to down 12 shots of Fireball whiskey as well as some flavored vodka. Yeah, you can imagine how that went down. She pukes all over the place, pukes again on the street, and drunk me is kind of all on my lonesome as our friends are all trashed as well. Somehow, I managed to navigate both of us back to the hotel on foot, mind you. I get her into the shower to clean off all the vomit, and she says she's okay. And then I flop onto the bed and pass out almost immediately. Now, all seems well until about 2 o'clock in the morning rolls around, and the hotel phone starts blaring. As I'm groggily trying to figure out what's happening, I get out of bed and I realize my feet are literally wading in water on the carpet. There is 2 inches of water on the carpet. She passed out in the shower, not the bathtub, but the shower only, and her body was perfectly blocking the drain in the floor. It ended up flooding our entire hotel room and leaking out into the hallway and into somebody else's room, who presumably called the hotel staff. We managed to get ourselves dressed, hotel staff comes up to talk to us, and we're shuffled to a new room without a watery carpet. There were no real consequences, and we were not charged for any fees. But here's the crux of the issue. My wife turns around and blames me for this entire circus. According to her, I apparently should have been more attentive and made sure she got out of the shower. I mean, she did say she was okay, and at that point, she did sound coherent. I mean, to be honest, I was drunk as well. Now, I guess I would get this if she didn't spring this on me after it was too late for me to not drink. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? Honestly, I don't think this is totally your fault. Your wife made a terrible decision and is now trying to blame that on you. Like, seriously, you need to be really brave if you want to try and get trashed in another country when everybody else in your party who could take care of you is also trashed themselves. Like, that is sketchy, that is not okay, and something really bad could have happened. And it also doesn't help that you also were kind of tipsy. Not to the point that your wife was at, but still, you were not really in a place to watch over her and try and babysit her. So the fact that she's trying to blame this on you, in my opinion, is really unfair. She made the decision to get completely wasted, not you. I mean, if she really wanted to drink for the rest of the night, she could have at least informed you first, so you could abstain from drinking and try and at least be her chaperone of some kind. So in my opinion, the timing just seems really bad. It seems like she jumped to the conclusion that this is somehow your fault, despite the fact that she's the one that decided to get completely wasted. I don't think that's your fault, and I also don't think it's anybody's fault that the room got flooded when she passed out in the shower. It kind of seems like everybody in this situation didn't really have a full grasp on what was happening because everybody was wasted and needed to rest. So no, I don't think you're the jerk. I think some really bad decisions were made, and it seems like your wife is trying to blame you instead of simply just trying to own up and take responsibility. I was fired earlier in my career by 2 senior people I reported to, but after several years, I finally got my revenge on them by playing a major role in practically torpedoing their career, and I've never felt better about finally getting revenge. Here's what happened. When I was in my early 20s trying to make it in the world and just starting out, I reported to a senior sales team as a junior salesperson. Really, it was a support role, and I knew my place. I was to watch, stay quiet, learn, and help them. I report to a lady who was mid-level and the senior guy who was head of sales. I was green, and while I was seeking mentorship and periodically asking for advice to improve how I was supporting them, they mistook that as incompetence. It was simple things like learning what format each of them preferred their daily reports in and what tasks they had to do. I also had an issue because the senior guy basically stole my first bonus at the 3-month mark. It was a tiny amount of money for him, but it was certainly a lot of money for my young self. I didn't officially complain, but asked him about how he was able to keep my bonus when it was obvious it tracked back to my efforts on the data. He didn't like that and didn't pay me. I was doing a good job. I'm fully aware of my skills, but with the explanation of them saying, it's just not working out, they fired me a few weeks later. I spent a couple of months getting a new job, which turned out to be an amazing smaller firm where I was appreciated, mentored correctly, and thrived. The new firm was very successful. About 2 years later, after I'd become a vital but still junior part of the smaller company, my former firm closed up in the region and put everybody out of work. So I saw through the glass while walking by the boardroom one day that the senior guy who stole my bonus was being interviewed for a job at my current firm. My current superiors didn't see me walk by, but my old boss and I made eye contact. Now, in a small sales team at a small firm, it's important to have a nice working relationship as well as having a lot of trust. It's also a lot of selfish salespeople who are there to make money and don't like being ripped off. So later that afternoon, I quietly mentioned to the boss about how I noticed they were interviewing this specific person in the office today when I was walking by. I then said to him, I used to work for that jerk and he stole my bonus one time. And you know what? It was all I needed to say, because the last thing my current boss needed was a person who'd do that to our team. Eventually, times got tough, and I know that man spent 2 years looking for work. 6 or 7 years later, I was at a new company in a more senior role, and the one lady who I originally reported to called me up and was selling at a new firm, and she was calling to see if I would be interested in purchasing from her. Now, I didn't know she had started working there. The firm she was with was selling something that was very basic and interchangeable to competing firms. She had gone from selling important things to selling a nothing product after the original firm had closed. She acted all happy and nice to me, and then she recalled the great job I did when we worked together. I also know she didn't want to be talking to me, but her call log said that she had to call. I told her thanks, and then she sends me along an official quote and proposal. And this proposal and quote, by the way, is after several hours of work on her part. Now, in the industry we're in, she was paid not only on new sales, but also for net sales measurements, meaning she had to retain clients as well as bring in new ones. Now, I had a lot of commitment at the firm she was now at. While she spent her afternoon drafting a proposal, I spent a couple of hours pulling all my business from that company and substituting it for a competitor up the street. She emailed me a full business proposal and mentioned that she was excited to be working with me again, and that she was excited to be supporting my business. She had no idea yet, but I had just pulled out everything, and she would never receive a bonus this year because of the size of the amount I pulled out. The next day, she emailed me quite upset and had CC'd her boss, who I'd known for years and had a good working relationship with. I replied to all, and I thanked her and said I decided to go with a competitor simply because it just won't work out, as I find her approach to business dealings to be completely insincere. Her boss emailed me back directly and asked what happened, and I replied that I just don't think that she is a sincere person. My business to their firm was worth more than her job, and she didn't last more than a month there after all that I did. Honestly, this is some crazy awesome revenge. Like seriously, this guy got burned almost a decade ago, and he did not forget the way these people treated him. They blatantly undervalued him, they didn't appreciate all the hard work that he put in, and to top it all off, they stole from him. And that is unacceptable. The original poster absolutely deserved that bonus. That guy had no right to take it, and his other boss had no reason to call him incompetent. So truly good for the original poster for getting some awesome revenge. It's not very often you get to put people in their place and basically torpedo their career, all because they seriously burned you earlier in your career. So honestly, this story shows that you need to be careful on how you treat people on your way up, because you might meet them again on your way back down. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out in the description below and subscribe.